On another evening of crime fighting, Detective Rayner finds himself in a high-speed pursuit of the city gangster. As he radios police headquarters, his partner urges him to wait for backup. However, Rayner presses on alone in his mission to catch the suspect. During the chase, the gangster attempts to evade capture by darting into an alley, but Rayner collides with the back of his car, forcing it to a halt. Rayner jumps out and pursues the gangster. Upon inspecting the trunk, he discovers a young woman trapped inside. As Rayner tries to assist her, the gangster reappears, launching an attack. Rayner skillfully dodges and retaliates with rapid punches, leaving the criminal dazed. After subduing him, Rayner plans to take the gangster to jail but first hands the victim a baton, allowing her to strike back at her captor. Days later, the gangster is taken to court where prosecutor James Kedak accuses him of heinous crimes. Once the evidence is presented, the judge rules him guilty and the punishment is death. Instead of traditional methods, the gangster is executed in a chamber that disintegrates his body before the crowd. Meanwhile, in an underground fight club, a group of cyborg criminals discusses the gangster's fate and their own survival. Thanks to Kedak's lawsuit, they learn the gangster was carrying a chip with crucial documents that could incriminate them, now in Kedak's possession. The group resolves to retrieve the chip before Kedak can uncover any damaging evidence. As Kedak celebrates his courtroom victory with a new Lazarus One car, he invites his ex-girlfriend Daria to dinner. He attempts to rekindle their relationship, which ended due to his controlling nature. After the meal, he tries to impress her with his new car, but she opts to go home. Frustrated, Kedak gives her a ride but threatens her to reconsider their relationship. Daria realizes he hasn't changed and leaves. Back at his office, Kedak receives a call from his assistant, Yasha, who has discovered a way to hack into the chip's files. Kedak, eager to avoid legal delays, keeps the chip hidden in his car and heads to the office. When he arrives, Yasha mentions that illegal methods would be needed to access the chip's data. Kedak, impatient, attempts to do it himself. Suddenly, he gets a message from his security guard asking him to leave early due to feeling unwell, but it soon becomes clear that the guard has been eliminated by the cyborg gang, who invade Kedak's office. The prosecutor grabs his gun and shoots, but one of the cyborgs, Henry, blocks the shots with his bionic arm and restrains Kedak in his chair. They demand to know where the chip is, but Kedak stands firm. In retaliation, Ash, one of the gangsters, uses a bloodwork to ignite Kedak's computer and pushes his face toward the flames. Despite his injuries, Kedak fights back, exchanging blows with Henry, but the cyborg overpowers him, breaking his arm and restraining him again with help from another gang member, Cold. When Kedak continues to resist, the last gang member activates a finger drill and blinds Kedak with it. Ultimately, Henry tosses Kedak out of the window where he falls onto his new car, blood splattering across the vehicle. The following day, Kedak's body is recovered while Detective Rayner searches for clues about the murder. Meanwhile, the cyborg gang visits their creator Talon, who is dissatisfied with their failure to retrieve the chip. He orders them to find the last person Kedak contacted, his ex-girlfriend Daria. As the Lazarus One car is towed to a junkyard, a worker hears its engine roar, now infused with its owner's vengeful spirit. He approaches the vehicle, but to his horror, the car runs him over and escapes the junkyard. The next day, Kedak's funeral occurs, attended by Daria, who pays her respects. Later, she returns home to a call from Detective Rayner, but she isn't ready to discuss the case yet. Meanwhile, Henry, leaving a nightclub, encounters the Lazarus One, which pursues him relentlessly. Desperate, he finds refuge in a store, but the car crashes through the glass door. Using all of his strength, Henry pushes against the car, but it presses him against the wall, and ultimately, he is crushed by the vehicle. The next morning, Rayner visits the crime scene, where he meets his colleague, Gravenstein. They speculate that Henry's death may be linked to the Kedak case, prompting Rayner to investigate further, starting with Daria. He heads to her workplace, determined to gather more information. Daria requests a meeting with Rayner at a restaurant, where he expresses his belief that Kedak's murder was not merely an act of revenge. Those behind it are after something. Daria, however, is unaware of what that might be. Rayner lets her leave but warns her to stay vigilant, as the criminals could target her too. As she arrives home, Ash watches her from a distance while a plainclothes officer sent by Rayner keeps watch. That night, Daria feels uneasy and asks her friend Mela to stay over. While they enjoy each other's company, the officer guarding their home becomes distracted. In a sudden ambush, Payne grabs the officer by the neck and knocks him out with a drill. Moments later, he and two armed mercenaries invade Daria's house in search of her. While Daria sleeps in her room, one mercenary finds Mila on the sofa and tries to wake her. Startled, she screams, waking Daria, who is confronted by the second mercenary. Mila attempts to escape but finds the door locked. The mercenary seizes the moment to attack her. Daria fights back against her assailant, managing to grab a gun from a nearby drawer and shoots him in the head without hesitation. Seeing this, Payne retreats, but Daria realizes her friend has been killed by him. Determined to end Payne's reign of terror, she runs out of bullets and flees into the forest. As she sprints through the trees, Payne catches up and knocks her to the ground, preparing to finish her off with his drill. Suddenly, a bright light emerges from the woods. It's the Lazarus One. Kadak's spirit controls the car, aiming it at Payne. Though he tries to escape, the possessed vehicle forces him off the road, sending him crashing onto the ground. Despite surviving the impact, he crawls away, but the car runs him over, leaving him in pieces. Shortly afterward, the police arrive at Daria's house, where Raynor finds her in shock. He takes her to a hotel for safety, providing food and locking her in her room. However, Daria, desperate for answers, throws a chair through the window and escapes, insisting on helping Raynor uncover the truth behind Kadak's and Mela's deaths. Reluctantly, Raynor agrees and brings her to a data market known for selling illegal information. Upon arrival, Raynor is surprised to learn that Daria is familiar with the place, revealing her past involvement in criminal activities. They eventually meet a guru in a warehouse who promises to share secret information for a price. Daria pays, and the guru uses virtual reality goggles to identify the leader of the cyborg gang, Talon. Just as he is about to divulge more, a gang infiltrator shoots the old man. Raynor quickly kills the assailant, but soon the entire location is surrounded by Ash and her henchmen. Raynor tells Daria to escape, but she ends up in an archive room where Ash confronts her. Ash demands the chip, but Daria insists she has no knowledge of it. The cyborg attacks, leading to a fierce struggle. Daria proves to be a skilled fighter, but Ash, underestimating her, activates a flamethrower attached to her arm, igniting the room. Daria manages to dodge the flames and finds her gun, shooting Ash and causing her to burn herself. Daria seizes the opportunity to flee, but Ash, despite her injuries, crawls after her. As Ash attacks, the Lazarus One appears, crushing her just as it did to her gang members. Though startled by the car's sudden appearance, Daria approaches it, surprised to find no one inside. She hears a voice resembling Kadak's but faints from exhaustion. Later, she wakes up at Raynor's home where he is treating her wounds. Grateful, she notices photos of Raynor with his daughter, who was tragically murdered by crime. Touched, Daria realizes her feelings for him, and Raynor reciprocates. They share a romantic moment, unaware that the monster car is watching them from a distance. Meanwhile, Talon meets with his cyborg army to discuss the losses caused by the possessed car, ordering them to destroy the vehicle in exchange for new cybernetic enhancements. Another day passes, and Raynor updates Daria on the investigation. During their conversation, Daria reveals witnessing Kadak's car attacking Payne and Ash to protect her. She believes the Lazarus One is possessed by Kadak's spirit, but Raynor dismisses this as a traumatic illusion, which angers Daria. She storms off, prompting Raynor to pursue her on his motorcycle. As he rides, the Lazarus One follows closely behind. Raynor manages to escape by climbing to a higher platform and grabs another motorcycle from the street. However, the possessed car is relentless, forcing him into a parking lot where it collides with his motorcycle, sending him crashing to the ground and injuring his leg. The vehicle approaches, but Raynor scrambles up a ladder and narrowly escapes. While recovering, Raynor receives a call from Gravenstein, asking him to protect Daria, unaware that Yasha, Kadak's assistant, is tracing the call. Yasha, who has been working with Talon and was involved in Kadak's elimination, sends a henchman disguised as a policeman to find Daria at Raynor's house, believing she knows the chip's location. Minutes later, the undercover officer arrives and tricks Daria into getting into his car. As they leave the parking lot, they are spotted by Talon's cyborg army, who chase them through the city. Despite being outnumbered, the possessed Lazarus One leads the cyborgs down a winding road, causing them to crash into each other. While the chaos ensues, the undercover policemen take Daria to meet Talon. However, once she realizes the deception, she draws her gun and orders them to pull over, escaping just as the Lazarus One passes by, crushing both men. Shortly after, the possessed Lazarus One finds itself surrounded by the remaining cyborgs. In a daring move, accelerates and leaps over their vehicles, speeding off in pursuit of Daria. Meanwhile, Daria is fleeing when she receives a call from the scientist Talon, who proposes a deal. If she hands over the Lazarus One, he will leave her alone. Daria agrees and leaves the car to an old quarry building. When they arrive, the car sees Daria in danger and rushes to her aid, but it falls into a pit, and the cyborgs surrounding the area open fire on it. One of the gang's cyborgs looks inside the car and, finding no driver, begins to search the cabin. He eventually discovers the chip that Talon desperately wanted. After retrieving it, he instructs his henchmen to destroy the car. Daria confronts him, insisting he honor their agreement and let her go. However, he replies that he cannot leave any witnesses. Daria attempts to fight back, but is overpowered by Colt, who restrains her with a razor and captures her, taking her to a dark room. Meanwhile, the Lazarus One is abandoned by the gang in a junkyard. Soon, an old mechanic arrives, spotting the battered vehicle. Despite its severe damage, he decides to repair it. To fix the car, he replaces the broken parts with new ones taken from another vehicle that had also once been possessed by a vengeful spirit. As night falls, Raynor, now aware of Yasha's ties to Talon, confronts him in his office. Yasha proposes a deal to spare Raynor and Daria, but instead, Raynor attacks him and the security guard, demanding to know their whereabouts and the significance of the chip. Yasha, unaware of their location, explains that the chip holds documents revealing Talon's connections to front businesses, including nightclubs. Despite his injured leg, Raynor sets off to find Daria. Meanwhile, the old mechanic finishes his work on the Lazarus One, transforming it into a unique blend of modern and retro design. He attempts a test drive, but the car won't start. Frustrated, he exits the vehicle only for the possessed car to start itself and run him over. The Lazarus One then rampages through the city, wreaking havoc and targeting Raynor. Back at home, the detective injects himself with medication to relieve his leg pain and searches for Talon's location on his computer. He remembers that a fallen ally, Henry, was last seen near a nightclub, suspecting it might be Talon's hideout. Unbeknownst to him, Daria is underground in the nightclub, where Talon has persuaded her to embrace her darker side. To prove her loyalty, he orders her to eliminate Yasha for leaking information to Raynor. Despite Yasha's pleas for mercy, Daria remains indifferent. Among the weapons available, she picks up a flammable liquid, pours it on him, and threatens him with a lighter. However, she ultimately spits the liquid in Talon's face, stabs him in the eye with a scalpel, and escapes. Talon commands Colt to hunt her down, and after witnessing Daria leave behind the lighter, he finishes off Yasha by igniting him. Minutes later, Daria continues her escape, taking down one of the guards and seizing his gun. Raynor arrives at the nightclub, attempting to intimidate another guard into revealing Talon's whereabouts. At that moment, the Lazarus One crashes into the venue, running over patrons while trying to target Raynor. The detective narrowly escapes and notices the guard entering a hidden door leading to Talon's hideout. He follows the guard with the possessed car in pursuit. Raynor searches desperately for Daria, who encounters Colt while trying to flee. She fights him off, but he is too strong and knocks her to the ground. Colt then releases a blade from his fist, attempting to finish her off, but Daria evades the attack, causing his hand to get stuck in the wall. Seizing the moment, Daria finds an axe nearby and uses it to sever Colt's arm before delivering a decisive blow to his neck. With Colt out of the way, only Talon remains, pursuing her with a gun. Fortunately, Raynor arrives just in time to help, and together they escape through the underground tunnels. Talon hears them and rushes after them, but Raynor surprises him with a punch that knocks him down. Seconds later, Lazarus One appears in the tunnels and the couple drives away, leaving the car to finish off the scientists. As expected, the possessed vehicle collides with Talon, sending him crashing through the hood and trapping half of his body in the windshield. Lazarus One then makes a sharp turn, separating Talon's body and eliminating him for good. With the cyborg gang finally dismantled, Daria decides to stay behind to destroy the car once and for all. She finds a box of dynamite on a forklift in a warehouse and asks Raynor to activate the explosives while she lures the car to her. When Lazarus One arrives, Daria calls out to Cadex's spirit, declaring that it will no longer control her. The vehicle becomes furious and charges at her, but Daria leads it to the dynamite box with an activated detonator. The two manage to escape just before the explosives detonate, seemingly destroying the possessed car. Soon after, an ambulance arrives to tend to the injured, and Daria is taken away on a stretcher. Before leaving, Raynor invites her to dinner, and they share a kiss. However, out of nowhere, Lazarus One attacks again. The car pushes Raynor aside and hits Daria's stretcher, sending her into the vehicle. The car speeds down the road toward a cliff, and despite Daria's attempts to communicate with Cadex's spirit, he doesn't respond. In a race against time, Daria frantically removes parts from the dashboard until she finally disconnects the car's controller, stopping it just before the cliff's edge. She manages to exit the car and pushes it toward the edge to ensure it can't harm anyone else. The vehicle falls off the cliff and sinks into the sea. Daria drives away, believing the car will be trapped underwater forever. However, deep below the surface, Lazarus One lights up, indicating that Cadex's spirit still lingers and will never cease pursuing his former companion. What did you think of this movie? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next one, homies.